All right, guys, so we're going to talk about how I create color palettes from photographs. It's actually really simple. It's not that hard to do at all. But we'll talk a little bit about color theory in this one as well. So let me just get a document going here. I'm going to do just regular US letter in Krita, and we'll do this in Krita, but you can do it in Photoshop or wherever. Come up with your own color palette anyways. And I need to open an image. So we're doing these from images. A lot of times when you're working on an art project, you find kind of a color scheme in an image that you might want to use. This is how you would go about doing that anyways. And just find an image that you like with interesting color. And then we're gonna sample from it. That's pretty much all there is to it, right? So I'm gonna take this image, copy it, paste it. So Control A, Control C, Control V, and paste it over here, right? And it's a very large image. So let me go ahead and Control T, size it lower. You just don't want to lower it too much, but it doesn't have to be like super large or anything like that, right? Okay, and so the color picker, usually in most software, you have a radius, right? So this is like taking a sample of the 5 pixels around wherever you sample, in my case. So I have it at 5. Sometimes 3 works well. You can change that if you need to. So you don't have to really blur this image or nothing, but you'll see that a lot of people do this, myself included. I still use the color picker setting like that, where it's either 3 or 5 usually. And then the image itself, I will blur it, right? So I can go filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur, and we can do this number, right? And you don't have to blur it out completely, just soften it up. So you're not looking at the image and you're just looking at kind of like the gradients and the colors there, right? That's the main idea for that. And so now we can start sampling these things. Use an opaque brush, not pressure sensitive opacity, hard round, or maybe like a square brush if you made one. You get the idea. And we can hold Control, pick colors in here. If we hold Control and drag around, we can see all the color wheel going crazy on the top right here. Now, color theory does come into play with this a little bit, depending on what your project is and what you're working on. Whether you're going to use cool colors, warm colors, is kind of the biggest thing for the most part. If you're doing something more realistic, you're not going to use super saturated colors necessarily. If you're trying to create more of like a surreal landscape like this photograph here, it's pretty saturated. So, I mean, it's pretty bright. You can see it's out there on the extremes. So something a little bit more natural, maybe like this one, maybe it's a little bit closer, right? What we'll see, go over here and do the same thing basically. And it should be a lot more in the gray area, but a lot of photographers tend to increase like the vibrance of the colors and stuff. So it may or may not be in the more grayed out areas. But you get the idea, right? We got another image we can work with perhaps. And yeah, if you look at the color wheel now on the top right there, usually more natural photos, they hardly if ever really venture off far to the right. Maybe sunsets like this one. This is like, you know, the golden hour probably when they took that photo. So sometimes certain times during the day, it might get a lot more bright like that. But the golden hour, of course, just being when everything turns yellow and orange and all that, right? Sunset or sunrise, somewhere around those hours where it's sun's coming up and down. Right. So anyways, you can just see, kind of get an idea, a feel for the colors that you're looking at here, like where they exist on the color wheel. Super useful to do when you're doing artworks too. So, but the main idea is that you have your warm colors. So it's kind of like this bright green to over to this area. And then, so left side, warm, right side, more cool, right? In these areas. And so, you know, you can start playing around with color theory if you're trying to create more calming mood or like scary environment stuff. You'd use darker, cool colors perhaps to make things feel more unknown or whatever. And then brighter colors to make things more cheerful perhaps, or intense or passionate, or even danger sometimes, like warning. You know, a lot of people like to use red for that. And so just keep color theory in mind in that respect. Now, we'll talk a little bit about graphic design too here in a sec, but let's go to a website, and I'm gonna put a link in the comments for this one. Adobe has a color picker that's available online if you want to check it out. There's different color harmonies that you can use, or color schemes kind of, right? So here's the main thing, right? There's all these different ones here, like monochromatic, right? There's going to be a triad, kind of like a little You get where I'm going? It's like split in three, the color wheel. So, and then we got complementary, which is one side and the other side. Okay, those usually work well together. There's a split complementary, which is like a Y. Okay, there's squared. Okay, it's compounds, right? And shades, of course. And so, and then you can make a custom one if you wanted. So the main thing here with this is that this is just a guide. I see a lot of people that rely off this way too much, this idea of making a perfect Y and stuff. And this is why, you know, when I was learning to create my own artworks and stuff, I didn't understand about the color wheel. I knew about warm and cool colors. That was it. And then I ended up just making what I saw, you know, when I'm drawing or whatever, I'm drawing what I see, not what I think it is. I'm looking at edges and gradients and colors that are in photographs and stuff, right? So I got kind of into this mindset that like it's better to create off reality sometimes than using rules, art rules. And sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's helpful. But if you want to do this, all you do is you just color sample holding control, and you start picking out colors and go to a new layer perhaps and use a very opaque brush here. And you can start to play around in these gradients a little bit, right? And that's going to be sometimes almost like shades. That's basically kind of what's going on. But this is just the colors that you might want to utilize. Okay. And then obviously we have two main ones here, and they're already looking good together because a photographer basically did the work for us, right? It's not like we're picking our own colors out of our head or imagination or anything. But we'll be able to do that off of this at some point sooner or later. Start to imagine doing things like that anyways. But you can see we could do like the sky here. So you can actually create little like mini color palettes like this. And you can kind of give them names too. You'd say like, you know, like golden hour sky or something, you know, like you get where I'm going with that? Like sunset grass, you know, like it's a pretty, it doesn't seem like much until you realize you can do that. And then it's like, now you're starting to fill out this idea of like words describing art can make it feel more artistic sometimes. It's kind of fun. It's a fun thing to do, I think. But Cliff Rocks, I don't suspect will be super interesting as far as color palettes go. But if you're going for something realistic, you know, it's needed, right? So you can do little circles, little squares. You can just kind of toss these in here. You know, you do have shades in here. You do have tones or values changes. So like, but the hue changes slightly as well. And so you could do just bunches and bunches of samples and just kind of lay them out next to each other and see what you get, you know, and then kind of pick from these ones as well. So you'd be like, you know, I like this, but this one's good because it's a little bit different. Maybe this blue because it's kind of nice or whatever. And then maybe this darker one. Okay, so we can create like our own little swatch setup here. It's kind of nice. And so here comes the fun part where we determine what we're going to do with this stuff. So oftentimes I like to do 3, right? And 3 by itself would be fine. Like you can do that, but then I like to do a flare. And this is going to be something like this. So there's going to be like 3 + 2 is just technical or whatever. No, if you look at like color swatches from interior designers when they're painting houses and stuff, oftentimes they use little setups like this. And so you can actually, you know, take colors from this one and try to use them with colors from this one if you really wanted to, and combo things together in just really interesting kind of ways maybe, right? And that's what's cool about just creating your own color palettes is like when you start working with imagery and you start understanding like complementary colors and triads and all that. Now you can actually imagine like, you know, if these are going to be yellows here, and we want to create like a triad, we need maybe like magentas and cyans or something, right? So we're in that area. And what do we have down here? We have blues, not really quite in that cyan area. So that probably wouldn't work as well with it, but that's not to say you can't break the rules, right? Like you can always break rules. Maybe we do the Y instead. So the blue would be acceptable. You see where I'm getting at with that? Okay. And then we would need a cyan. And guess what this usually is? Sky blue. It's pretty close to cyan, right? It's not quite there, but it's close. And we might get away with using something like that. Maybe even that background mountain there because there's so much environmental haze in the way that you can probably get away with it, right? So now we have a yellow. Maybe we use these as flare colors. Maybe we use this as our base. Maybe we just we do one of these. We don't have enough variation here, I think, that it really makes a difference. It doesn't really matter as much. So that's unfortunate. And maybe we can find something to get some more variation in there. And you don't have to always stick to like this idea of that they're like all complementing each other, right? Like they're all bluish. Like if you want to just mix it up and do like greens in there and stuff too, like you could do that. There's nothing that stops you from any of this basically. You can sample it all over the image and just try to figure out like what's going to work, you know, all these different colors you got to play with now. It just helps you kind of remove it from the image more. And so you can start to see what you're trying to do. Don't use the brush I'm using. Apparently I'm not doing everything correct, but I think you get the idea. We could even run with those slightly desaturated like that because they're opaque right now on a gray background. So they're slightly desaturated. But yeah, all right. So we got one blue. It looks kind of good. Does that mean we can't like mix it somehow with these other ones? I mean, maybe you can get away with this. You got to kind of put them next to each other and just figure it out, right? Like, is that going to work? No. And so they don't look good. They don't look complementary to each other. Would this part of the cliff rock look okay next to it? Sure. I mean, that's fine. And so maybe we just go with this one, right? And so now we can use a flare color. And we'll go with the next one down, maybe. Or we can go to the more extreme side of it, right? And so this color palette, it's looking okay-ish. This isn't working for me, though, right? That one there just doesn't sit right with me. I'm not sure why. But maybe a little darker. Maybe this one, if it's quite okay. Or maybe that light one there. Sometimes you got to rearrange them as well. Just use a lasso and move it. Usually it's like darker to lighter is what I like to do. Okay. And so that kind of becomes a good color palette now, right? You see, you got to work with it a little bit, but once you get the hang of it, you know, you can go through images and combo images together, combo color palettes together, whatever the case. Now, when you're color picking, on the other hand, right? So you want to do like just over here, let's do like a lemon yellow kind of thing. And we can go to the extremes here. Maybe we use that for a flare, right? But a lot of times when you're creating artwork, like you got a color selection and you want to like decrease the value maybe, right? So you do that. Whenever you decrease or increase values, let me show you how this works on its own piece here. Okay. So like we got that color now, but we're going to increase value. A lot of times you want to move the hue just a tiny bit. Tiny bit, not that much. Let's try that again. Gotta remind myself to do a small amount here. You might want to move it a tiny bit, right? Like you're working the value up and you're changing the hue, and then you're gonna maybe work the value down and change the hue. Okay, and so this works really well for doing shading and stuff like that because colors kind of change depending on the lighting, right? Keep that one in mind. Another great way of just kind of coming up with a color palette if you need to, because you could use these in graphic designs, right? Like it's not just about creating photorealistic images. It can be used in cartoons and things like that. So this one here, like it's already fully saturated. Maybe I just desaturate it a little and change the hue a little bit, right? So we can have like another, that was maybe a little too much. We can have a nice, another kind of like complementary yellowish color here, right? To go along with that, that might work out well. Or we could try to change the tone or the hue or do whatever we want, right? And let's make it the Y setup like I was trying to originally go for there. Let's do a blue, and we can color sample or pick. It's really up to us. There's a blue like that. We go down and a little more saturated and a little over in the hue. That should be pretty close, maybe a little bit too much. Okay, so that's a nice little change there. I like that one. So these are basically just, you know, complementing each other. That's like the main idea here. We're not trying to go too fancy with this and create like some kind of big lecture out of it, you know, and make this some big, huge ordeal. But you can see how these ones start working with each other. They contrast each other well, and it's just the split, like only half of the Y, which is great. But if we went the other way with the Y, you know, we could do something similar and start to play around with colors over here as well. Maybe not as saturated. Maybe we desaturate those quite heavily, right? I don't think this one is quite right, but, and then we want to change the hue a little. You see where we're going with that? And maybe a little bit more on this side. Yeah, there we go. That might work too. That's a little too far, I think. I think we went a little too far with it, but, you know, yeah, not quite there. These two together look pretty good. This one, not as much. But you never know. Maybe these two together without the blue next to it works out better, you know? So sometimes you just got to eyeball things. That's all there is to it. And you can go kind of to the extremes on this too. Like you can make palettes that are just literally just the brightest colors if you wanted to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that if you just want to, you know, like we're going to use this orange. We're going to use this yellow. And we're going to do, I don't know, this green down here, one of these greens. And so if we want to make something like that, that'd be like good fall colors, obviously. It's fall kind of setup there anyways. So you could use that as a base. And you got to remember when you're doing something like graphic design, when you have print, and by the way, if you hit Control Y here in Krita, it kind of previews the idea of printing in CMYK instead of using sRGB color space. So you can always do things like that. You lose contrast, you lose colors. So some of these colors might not actually work out very well. You can see how they change a little bit. So this is be more representative of what you would see in a print. Although printers have gotten really good these years, and it's not really as big of an issue as it used to be necessarily. But if you ever try to print something, you'll run into this issue sometimes, depending on the printer. So you can see we lose a lot of contrast. And so if you want to like pick your colors and then tweak them and adjust them just so that it looks better when you do the soft proofing there, which is what Control Y does, you can do that. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to go to print. Now, but yeah, we could do this all day long, guys. Like it's really fun to play around with these kinds of things. But like when you're working on a specific object, let's say you're creating an alien and you want to find a cool color scheme for the alien or something, you know, you could use animals out there. You could use like a leech or a beetle. You can color sample off of it. You can kind of steal the colors from the animal kingdom there. Really super useful. And it's a lot of fun. But when you're doing like graphic design, which is what we're getting into, and I kind of went off topic there, didn't I? Graphic design, when you goes to print, that thing there, right? Usually, if you were printing more colors, it would cost more. So you would have to, well, if you wanted cheaper prints, you would do like one color, or you would do 2 colors or 3 colors. And every time you go up, it would become more and more expensive, basically. So you'd notice that a lot of like logos and stuff, they're just black or white for the most part, because it counts as one color, basically, right? And then, you know, a lot of times they would kind of max out at 3 colors. The more complexity you add, obviously, to logos, the less impactful it becomes, right? So you want to try to keep them as simple as possible, usually for very easily brand identification for the most part. That applies to the colors too, not just shapes and things like that. So, but yeah, these things, these work basically. And if you look at automobiles, they also have like, there's different like manufactured products. They have different types of color scheming, obviously, right? But one of my favorite is some of the exotic supercars out there and muscle cars and stuff like that. But a lot of times they have like a nice, maybe like a gray body or it's silver or something like that, or like a, I don't know, like a charcoal or something like that, where it's like semi-metallic or maybe got metallic flake in it. Things like that. You can't well represent that very well in 2D unless you do a little bit of additional work. But the main idea is it would be something like a gray, and then they might have like a light gray or even white. And then they break up the color scheme like you would kind of with graphic design, basically. And the idea is that, you know, your gray is going to fill most of the space. That's going to be like your 70, right? And then that would be like your 20%, right? And then you would have a flare color. And so you see like Ferraris and stuff doing this quite a bit, where they get like a little extra going on one side of the vehicle, and it's a little bit asymmetrical. And so that would be your 10% right there, right? The flare color. And I needed to talk about that because when it comes to like interior design, a lot of times you might have like a room and it has a little door, and that's your basically just your room, right? So interior designers, what they like to do, and this is probably a bad example of it, if they have a short wall, what they like to do a lot of times in these kinds of spaces, because you know they're more complex than this, obviously, in like real architecture. And maybe I can actually draw here. It'd be great. All right. You might have like little break walls sometimes. There's like this goes back in there somewhere or something like that, right? So there's another little wall here or something. Anyways, so they'll pick kind of color schemes like, and you can get color palettes from paint manufacturers, by the way. You can get actual palettes set up, and you can import them into Krita or Blender or wherever you're working, actually. But like, say you use like an off-white for most of your walls, right? Let me do this underneath it. It's just colored in. So like most of the walls are going to be like an off-white. Okay. But occasionally what they do is they mix it up, and they will use like a flare color somewhere, right? Like maybe this wall becomes like a maroon type color or something. I don't know. So they make one of them kind of like stand out maybe, but they don't always do it this way. So that's just like with two colors. Sometimes it's more like the vehicle here, where a majority of the walls, you know, maybe like the biggest ones are gray, right? And they try to balance it out basically across the space, or they might make it asymmetrical, or all kinds of weird things that you can do with design and architecture. I don't know if this makes any sense here, but you get the idea. We're doing something like that, right? But then maybe one wall out of this whole area becomes a flare wall. You know what I'm saying? And oftentimes this little flare wall also gets a little bit of decorative elements. And they might get like some little tree branches or something on it. You see what I'm getting at it with that, right? So if you just kind of go to the websites that, you know, talk about interior design, and people design their house like with the seasons, sometimes like repaint the walls and stuff, keeping up with the Joneses type stuff. Yeah, just go look at it and see like what's in style, what's trending, and what's this year's fashion, I guess, for interior design. That's the kind of stuff they really go over when it comes to like the colors. The whole space has color. It has like a color palette, right? The furniture is going to be a certain color. The walls will be a certain color. They're going to think about, you know, how they distribute the importance of different aspects of the living space by placement of furniture, and you know, the ratios of what they do in that space. So the 70-20-10 rule, basically. But it's a little bit more involved and complex because it's not like you're putting stuff into a box, perhaps in a lot of cases, but you know, architecture can get really wild, so it's not always a box, and it can it's a great learning opportunity. I think it's not only going to teach you about color, it's going to teach you about just placement of things, and it's really good. So, you know, you can just look at references for this because it's hard to remember all this, right? So, you know, whenever you need a reference, you know, use a reference, load up an image of a space, and think about how you maybe would change it a little bit, and use some of these principles here in this video to apply to that, you know, and have fun with it. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So, I mean, you really can just have lots of fun with it. And usually the cool tones make better fillers, desaturated often as well. And brighter things can be kind of flare colors. And it's not to stop you from, say, like making all of this highlighter yellow, line yellow, or whatever. If you wanted to do that, you could, I guess. I don't think I would, but and you can, you know, like maybe do like little trims or something. Maybe not with that one. This one, in most things, like any color will really match with gray, right? Or black or white. So that's one of the great things is like you can do black and white and then an accent color. That's another little trick, I guess. That's why this is used here, because it's just very easy to do. I don't know what else I would do on this one in particular, but I don't know. Maybe try to trim the whole area up. See how it works out for you, I guess. I don't know. But see, just having a trim on the top and the bottom is kind of boring, to be honest. I don't know if I would like that. If you have opacity, it's going to turn green, just so you know. Opacity does actually kind of mix like colors a little bit. It might turn gray too, so that's another thing, because color mixing turns gray sometimes. You got to watch out. But yeah, maybe make it more of like a 20% instead of like a 10% at the bottom. You can drag that up a little. That's a lot. Actually, that brings up a good point. You know what would look really well with something like this is the earth tones. We already kind of got like the yellow and the grays, so those are kind of neutral to gray, right? But the earth tones, maybe we do like a brown, like there's wood. This is why you see like a lot of designs, they have like that like waist high kind of wood setup, because it just looks nice, right? I don't know if I'd go with that kind of orangey wood, maybe more like a sandalwood type deal, or you know, like a lighter one. That might work out better, basically. But you see how it all kind of combos together? It's fun. It's like the craziest fun thing you can learn about is how graphic design, interior design, 3D modeling, and concept art, and all of it kind of combines together into like this one conglomerate of a mess where you're just doing all of it. It's just really cool by the end of it. You'd probably have like these wood frames too that kind of match and take it up a little bit more vertical. And then maybe later on you do like some wall art, right? Set dressing 101, basically. And then you'd have your furniture in here, some kind of table or something, coffee table, couch, all that other fun stuff. Cool, right? So anyways, who knew? Color palettes, right? Color palettes start to take you into this territory when you learn, you know, if I just showed you how to select gradients all day, what fun is that? I mean, there's more to color palettes than just selecting gradients. So it's all of this. It's really cool. And so hopefully you learned something today, right? And you can apply this now to your works of art or your 3D modeling projects or whatever the case. And if you like this, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll check you out on the next one. All right, take care.